It's actually a considerable run from there to the North Switch, Otter Lake. I'm not sure why we placed county so far north, actually. There's the whistle post for the crossing at Otter Lake. There's the North Switch. In a few seconds, the train will pull to a stop, and the locomotive will be run around. Of course, I clip this pretty aggressively because these runarounds are usually done relatively slowly and cautiously in the US. There's always a concern that there could be a technical defect in the switches or whatever, because in America the infrastructure is iffy pretty much everywhere other than a few of the very fastest main lines. The assumption is always be very, very careful with your equipment, on the assumption that there's something that you don't see, which I guess is good safety advice to know. That's actually the attitude you see in the airlines also. Even though they get a lot more subsidies than the railroads and so their equipment's in better condition, they always assume that what they have doesn't work, rather than assuming everything they have does work. Here's the RS-18 again, running around. The RS-18U, the low note. This has a few clips in it to try to shorten your wait while they do all their safety checks. I wasn't able to cover the initial terminal test once they coupled either, just because I didn't have a scanner, a radio scanner. And to really follow that, you need a radio. As the conductor walks the train and checks the application and release.
You waving?
My camera is very jiggly here because I was hand shooting, and this range is pretty much at the limit of what the camera can do. It's not a very expensive camera.
Big train, huh? Big train?
I apologize for all this motion. But you can see the conductor is unlocking and throwing the switch here. So he is checking the points there to make sure there's nothing wrong with them. Again, the abundance of caution that I mentioned earlier. So he's locking the switch just to make sure it doesn't slip. He'll obviously have to unlock it and throw it again when the locomotive comes back towards the train. In America, the standard position for any switch is line for the main, so they're almost always locked in that position. And you notice there's a red signal on the switch right now indicating that it's line for the siding, because a green signal will indicate the main, because that's the default position, and red indicates something else. Whether you have to stop or not depends on what you're trying to do, of course. So he's unlocking and realigning the switch there for the main. Locking it again. And they run the locomotive back. Virtually all American trains use knuckle couplers. In Europe, they're usually called Buckeye couplers. And as you may know, the way you couple a buckeye or knuckle coupler is to open it with the cut lever. You can see that yellow lever on either side of the locomotive there. And then you deliberately run the locomotive into the train. But you obviously have to run at very, very slow speed to avoid any damage. We were told never couple faster than 4 miles an hour, and they said do not couple at 4 miles an hour. So in other words, take it easy, because you're basically doing a controlled collision. And if you damage anything, it's going to be really expensive. So another thing that American railroads do is they'll stop a few feet from the hitch to check the alignment of the couplers. So that's what the conductor is doing now. He's checking to make sure that both couplers are aligned properly. And here he's making especially sure that it's set up correctly before he does the hitch. So then, as I said, the locomotive has to proceed forward very, very slowly to go easy on the couplers. But you do have to give it a bit of a bump so that you can see that pin in the middle of the coupler there drop to lock the couplers. And unfortunately for you, and for me watching this video, this passenger car's diaphragm extends over the couplers, so you don't actually get to see the couplers hitch. And you can see the pin drop there, see? And then the locomotive actually bounces off the train, which has its brakes in emergency at the moment, because they pulled the brake hose off when they decoupled. And speaking of that, the next step, of course, is that the conductor has to connect the air again. So the brake hose there is the hose closest to the coupler, the angle cock on it. But he has asked for 3-point protection to safely go between the cars, which he didn't hear, but he would have. He's just connected the air hose, and the next step will be to turn the air on. Most safety advice you get is to do this slowly so that you don't have the hoses exploding or bursting apart and injuring you. It's not just an issue of the hose itself, but also they can pick up ballast and hit you in the face. But he eased it open there, it seems to be fine. And now the train will charge and he'll do his road test, actually. Initial terminal test to make sure the brakes still work, and then we'll be on our way. Apologies that I don't have a scanner, so I wasn't able to capture all that. Those other hoses, incidentally, are for multiple unit controls. The vast majority of American locomotives control their multiple unit running via air signals rather than electrical signals. So here we're rolling again. Unfortunately, with the locomotive coupled right in front of me, I don't get as good a view. Just can kind of point out the side as if I were not in an open-air car. This is part of why I didn't shoot very much video on the trip back. It wouldn't really make very much sense. And you've seen the whole line anyway. So I will include the canoe pickup and a little surprise at the end here. So we're picking up speed to leave Otter Lake here. You can hear the Alco working. I'm actually going to run out of video time again here, so I'll switch the video over when I run out of time.